heroes, welcome in. Today we are going to be talking about how much story cohesion matters, a little spilled milk over some casting choices. We're going to be talking about actors that have hit the role perfectly, things that made us cheer, things that made us cry in the theaters. So stick with us.
Thanks for joining us. As always, we are your hosts for hire. We mean that, by the way. We are at your service. Let us know in the comments what you'd like to see us talk about or just your thoughts in general. We're here to listen. So let us know. We do appreciate you stopping by. And we would also appreciate it if you'd like, share, and subscribe at Hosts4Hire podcast,
Please.
with the number 4. So today we were talking a lot about story cohesion, the writing and casting of superhero content and how important it is. And we were just talking about it so much, we figured we'd jump on and see what you guys have to say about it. So join the conversation. Let us know. What we were getting at really was just like how important it is to universe building and to payoffs and to storylines in general.
Right. When we're talking about story cohesion, we mean like nowadays movies are no longer just one movie, right? But before you'd make like either one movie or a trilogy, and that's all you got. Like today, like we're building universes, right? So like having this type of like through point cohesion is almost like a new concept to like what we're seeing in cinema. But also like Kyle was saying, like it's become so integral because it's how we get those like extreme payoff moments. Like we all know that or remember being in a theater where like everyone claps, right? Or everyone cheers or everyone screams or everyone cries together, right? Like all those moments are always super powerful, right? And when you leave the theater, that's the thing that you remember. For me, one of those like biggest moments, I'm sure for everyone across the board, is like Cap with Mjolnir, right? Like when he pulls that Mjolnir, that was set up movies beforehand, like whole like probably like 5
3, 4,
years
5. Yeah, 5 years
beforehand.
Yeah.
With him like slightly lifting Mjolnir, right?
Same with On Your Left. It's the same.
Yep.
It's the same gap of time. Yeah,
Yep,
like
exactly right. Those moments got paid off, and they feel so good because they're written to have that type of through point cohesion. And it's like in the writer's room, they're trying to get that reaction out of you, right? And there's like some cases like those two where they just hit so freaking well. Like that's what we should, Kyle and I always say what we're doing in this podcast, we're trying to elevate content, right? Between him and I talking and then you guys talking to us. What the point is to elevate the content that we get to see. And the content that we like love at its peak is like those moments. Like that's like
and like those payoffs are so important to fans because it's what we're there for. Like
right.
The reality is whether we realize it or not, like I kind of had an epiphany about it today. Like it, in my opinion, is the most important thing to whether something succeeds or fails in today's superhero mediums, in media rather, is whether or not the story concludes cohesively. If it doesn't, it just falls apart and we don't get anything. There has to be a buildup and a payoff.
Yeah, because like some examples of that not working are like in the DCEU, right? With like one thing that comes to my mind right away is the rebirth of Superman, right? That was something that they set up prior that could have had a really big crowd reaction, excited, clapping, cheering. I don't know about y'all in your theaters, but all there was just awkward quiet and just like the scene that comes to my mind is when all the Justice League are pushing against him and he's just like standing there and like all of them together can't even get him to like budge like an inch. Hated that, bro.
When Wonder Woman could get him to budge solo.
Dude, like right. like
she could actually do damage solo.
Like that's a whole nother can for a whole nother day. But like, those are the things that like that scene could have paid off if in the writer's room they were just having the thought. Like way before the movie is even made is when you have to have those thoughts. You have to have people that care about these characters.
And in my mind, in my mind, that's why the MCU is doing so well and had done so well previously, is because they focused on from Iron Man 1. They
Yep.
had the idea and concept, I would argue, through Age of Ultron almost. Like they had it for sure through Avengers, but I'm sure they had ideas for further beyond it as well.
Yeah.
You know,
I
like
absolutely agree
they
with that.
had those thoughts brewing. It wasn't just like this is what we're gonna do and then we'll go from there. And
Yep.
like I was saying, the buildup is really important. When you bring up the DCEU, that's one of the biggest issues in my mind. Isn't necessarily the payoffs, is that there was no buildup, so there's nothing to pay off. Like you
Yeah.
can't have a payoff if you don't build it up.
Right. Honestly, if I'm going through my brain, I can't think of another possible build-up moment in the DCEU that we got other than the rebirth of Superman. That was like
Yeah,
the
let
only
us know,
moment
guys.
that they
What
had.
were some moments that you felt were good payoffs in the DCU? What were some moments that you wished you'd seen? Because we had a hard time thinking of really
Yeah.
any
Like,
because
what are
of the
some
lack
moments?
of buildup.
Did you cheer at any moments
Mhm.
throughout the DCU? And we're not talking like, there's always in the superhero movies where, especially Kyle and I, when we're watching next to each other, where you're like, oh, like, oh, shit, like, that was cool.
Yeah.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about like those very rare like theater moments, like Cap with Mjolnir, where people were standing, cheering, screaming in the
Throwing their
theaters.
hats. I
Like
literally in our
literally,
first watch through, there were hats flew everywhere. Like
like
there were
people,
hats flying around the theaters.
usually it's just Kyle and I being obnoxious and just being like, "Oh shit!" Wow! It was literally every person in the theater was like on their feet, clapping,
Screaming.
cheering, like at a ball game. Like
Yeah.
those are a lot rarer. Um, and like those obviously are big payoffs, right?
Mhm.
Ones that, like we said, took years, a 5-year build up to pay something off. But there's also the ones that are like within the same movie.
Mhm.
A good example of that is also we'll use Endgame, where the like I Love You 3000, right, where he
Mm.
sets that up at the beginning of the movie with his daughter, and then by the end of the movie, that full circle payoff, it gets that emotional reaction out of you when like his hologram tells him.
It became a part of the zeitgeist. I Love You 3000 is now a
Right,
part of the zeitgeist. It
right, because
will
it
forever.
was
People
done
know
so
what it'll be.
well. Like that's
Yeah.
what you like. I think like movie makers, sometimes there's blueprints of what like has worked before in films, and like that's something that like I think you should aspire to. Like
Mhm.
that's to me, specifically in the superhero genre, which isn't one that usually invokes emotional reactions out of people. It's
Mhm.
usually one that's more like action based. It's just cool looking. Uh, to be able to hit those emotional like payoffs, like another great one that comes to my mind is Old Man Cap.
Oh,
At
yeah.
the end of the Endgame, when he's an old man, it
God,
feels to the
it feels like
viewer.
all of it's Endgame. Endgame might have been the best payoff movie ever made. Like,
Dude,
you know,
and you're not wrong about it, dude. Because like again, to me, seeing Cap as an old man, it felt so good, and it felt so nostalgic, and you're so happy to see him at the end of his
Mhm.
journey, because we've got to see him throughout all the rest of it, and it was so good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if Cap in the movies wasn't like that good of a character,
People wouldn't
seeing
have
him
cared
as an
about
old
that.
man at the end wouldn't have given you that like warm and also like tragic
Exactly.
like
And
feeling,
and like not ending a story cohesively can take even shows and movies and things media with the most rabid fans completely out of it.
Mhm.
You had mentioned earlier when we were talking Game of Thrones season 8
Yep.
is a great example of that because it didn't have the source
Cult
material.
following.
Yeah, an absolute like cult phenomenon of a show, like a pop culture phenomenon show. And
Lost
everyone
it like
hated it. It
that.
lost it instantly in season 8 because people
Yep.
hated it. One that I thought that comes to my mind is Lost. For the first 5 seasons of Lost, people were just chomping at the bits to see what was going to come
That
next
was
week
one of
during
those
the
like
airing.
old school things that like I don't want to say before the internet because there was, but like it wasn't this information age where you could just find out anything you wanted. So like the premise of Lost was just this like mystery
Well,
to
and
people.
they did a
It
lot
was
of
just this
confusing.
enticing, like
Well, and they did a lot of confusing, convoluted storylines that were like, "Ooh, well, where's this gonna end up?" And then it just didn't go anywhere. And it literally, in my opinion, Lost went from potentially being one of like considered one of the greatest television shows ever made to being a joke, to being
yeah.
oh they just wrote it that they were all that like
It was
not
just
to ruin
purgatory.
Lost if you haven't seen it. I mean, it's 20 years old now, guys. But like that it was just none of it mattered. That it
Yeah.
wasn't everything that we had seen
You,
wasn't
you,
real.
you know,
Like,
I think The Lost was one of those cases where somebody had a cool concept, they released it, and then it was like, holy shit, people love this, and they want more, like a lot more, and they want an end. And he was like, I didn't write an end.
the end was after season 2. You guys kept going. I don't have any more.
Shit, we have to think of an end now. You know what I mean? Like one of those situations where it got bigger than it was supposed to, and it was like, oh fuck, what are they doing?
Got a little too big for the britches.
Like, what is going on that island? Like, oh shit! Like,
we gotta figure it out. To counter that though, like I would argue, like so. Those things, like I said, could have been really well, but they weren't finished properly, and
yep.
that's a big part of it. It has to have a good build up, and it has to be finished properly, and it has to make sense. People really hang on that, and not just reason why I bring up Lost is because it's not just fantasy and sci-fi nerds and superhero nerds. It's something human, like
I was just about to say storytelling. You know what I mean? Like that getting. Us, like the psychology of being human, likes that full circle moment. You know, like when something comes back and you're like, oh, I recognize that. Like, ooh. It feels good.
It feels like something that's just like inherent, you know, like
it just feels good. You know what I mean? And when it's done, like you said, because it can be done poorly, it can be done in bad taste, and then it can be done masterfully. And that's why, like specifically in the superhero media, no director or like writers ever get credit for like the art of like making a superhero movie. You know, like that's not seen as like high cinema. But like achieving those levels of payoffs, like the cheering from Cap lifting Mjolnir and laying it down to Thanos, like that whole sequence, people were cheering
from the moment on your left started. You know, like even before, like every moment throughout that entire
to achieve that is really impressive. No matter if it's in a superhero movie, if it's in a Martin Scorsese movie, if it's in a thriller, a horror movie, whatever it is, to achieve like that level of like audience unity, you know what I mean, where everyone feels the same feeling. That's awesome.
Impressive. Yeah. So we've talked about some good and some bad, but I'm curious, what is asking you guys as well as Lucas, what are some of your favorite eureka or full circle moments in anything? It doesn't just have to be superhero stuff.
Oof. The first thing that comes to my mind is the number 23. Right? If you guys haven't seen the number 23, go watch it with Jim Carrey. I'm not going to say anything past that. Like,
I agree that has one of the best eureka aha payoff moments.
Yeah.
Anywhere, anything, anywhere.
Yeah.
One that comes to my mind though is
I'm gonna go number 23.
So like barring Endgame, because just like we've been talking about this whole 15 minutes or whatever, like it's a lot of them with us with nerds. Tomorrowverse with the DC animated movies that have all come out.
Kyle,
without trying to ruin anything, the payoff of that, the way that they made the cohesion, like that I was thinking about that, and that's what sparked this whole concept for this whole episode was how well they made so many different stories throughout decades.
Yeah. Line up
and come together. That
one
payoff.
Actually, a huge spoiler warning here. If you guys haven't seen the Tomorrowverse yet,
skip like 30 seconds. Like 30 seconds.
Yeah. Upon when I was watching that, and like the way that they walk you through connecting the dots as in the film, that like they're revealing it to you that it's all been connected through the DCEU,
the DCAMU, from everything prior from the animated shows from the 70s and 80s and
everything, dude. Like when they're like piecing that together, I can't believe I forgot about that because it blew. Like it was one of those moments where like it felt like my jaw was on the floor for like the rest of the movie.
Yeah, like I couldn't get over it.
Just like process. Like it was just like
It
That's
was
the one
good.
actually.
Yeah.
That's over number 23. Like as far as a like full circle, because that was a full circle and a eureka moment.
Yeah.
It was like a payoff from shit plus like they've been hiding something like in plain sight from you, and it was just beautiful.
Yeah. So if
Oh,
you guys are
actually,
back from
hold
that
on.
spoiler world, maybe not.
Another one, another great eureka moment that just sparked in my mind is God of War, Atreus.
Oh,
Atreus
yeah,
being
being
Loki.
Loki.
That blew my brains, dude. And then upon second playthrough, they're just shoving it in your face.
It's like
Atreus
how
is
even
Loki.
so playing through the first game again. I played
That's
through
what
the
I
first
mean.
game after, yeah, and it's like the whole series, like in both games, they're just like it's Loki. He's Loki.
Yeah, in the second game, like they're calling him Loki, and it's like much more.
Yeah. But
But
even the first half of it, yeah,
in that
like
first one, it's just like they're shoving that shit down your throat, and
yeah,
and
so
you
good.
still don't get it. That's beautiful writing.
That's how you do it.
That's how you do it. You know,
Yeah.
if anything is to be said, the point that Colin and I are trying to get across here today is that we want more of these high tier levels of quality stuff, right? Like there has to be a blueprint of what achieves that. Who were the
Mhm.
writers in those projects? Who were the directors? Who are the visionaries of those moments? Those people should one get more credit, two be involved in more stuff.
Yeah.
We have to have data on this stuff.
There's
And like
gotta be. Like, there's gotta be tons of data that the executives use to
I know
determine who to
it's
hire,
it's
but
an art form, so like
mhm,
sometimes like it works and sometimes it doesn't.
yeah.
But like as
I don't know, like,
fans,
I want it through any medium too. Like to just touch on, like, I don't get, like, we need it through across all mediums. If we're gonna elevate the quality of the content, we need it to not just be in movies or shows, but it needs to be live action, animated,
yeah,
games. Like every single place where there's books, everything where there's storytelling happening. We need to
people who
be.
care should be the ones in charge of what it is. Like that's always
Absolutely.
how it works.
People who care, and we had talked about this in one of our casting videos. We talked about like our favorite castings. Go check it out.
Mm-hmm.
But like people who care about the characters they're being cast as is so important, and people who understand the nuances of those
Yep.
characters.
Yep.
Like an example that pops into mind is John Barenthal's Punisher. The way he is, like, Punisher is not a good guy, but the way that John Barenthal the way that the writers wrote that character and the way that John Barenthal portrayed it combines together to make it really, really well done.
Yeah.
Like,
Like you said, like with those characters, like you said Punisher, for me it comes up like Bucky.
mm,
There's these characters where they have a capacity for like extreme violence, right? Where they like have a capacity to be like very bad men. But like the actors portray it in such a way that you can see their inner turmoil somehow. Like
mm-hmm,
that's like where acting becomes like this brilliant art form to me that I can't quite quantify. Because like there's an example in Falcon and the Winter Soldier where Bucky goes like full Winter Soldier again. Remember when like Zemo like tells them like Bucky like attack and he goes like full Winter Soldier? That shit's dope as fucking shit. Like
mm-hmm.
Sebastian Stan in there while in the action scenes of being so extremely violent, you can see in like
His
one in the
eyes
I was
almost.
gonna say one in the subtext because like
Mm-hmm.
there's really well done subtext, and then two, like you said, like his eyes where you can see the pain and like the reluctance that he has to
I
go
know
back to
exactly
that
the
place.
scene. Yeah, I know
It's
exactly
so
what, like,
good.
it's so powerful.
It's
Like,
and like John Barenthal's Punisher is something really similar in the Punisher show where you can see like what he is a father.
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like what he is a tender man, but like that was taken. So like now he has to do like all this heinous shit, and like that's not who he is. It's who he's become.
And who
Like
he feels he needs to be to survive.
somehow in the performance, all of that like subtext and nuance is put out because these actors, like one, like you said, they understood the assignment. Two, like they care about it. Like it's not just like a silly superhero role. They treat it like any other role where they're getting into the mind of the character, into his emotions,
And the like
Mm,
when it comes like they're even like their micro expressions, understanding that, controlling and understanding like how to use those, going to what you were saying about Sebastian Stan using his eyes and his
right.
like his just the slight fluctuations in his muscles to portray something that he's outwardly not
Yep.
portraying. It's
Yeah,
so
because like,
good.
yeah, it's fantastic again because like it's playing on the human senses. You know, like we can pick up those things without necessarily um
Consciously picking up
consciously
on.
picking it up, but we pick up on body language so extremely well, just as like the human race. That like
Yeah.
using that in a performance is so beautiful. It's so awesome.
And it's what
Uh,
separates good actors from great actors in my opinion.
100%, one
Like,
hundred
yeah.
percent, 100
All
percent.
right, let us know what your favorite full circle moments are, what your least favorite moments, what you want to see going forward, all of that, please.
Yes, your
And
favorite actor portrayals. You know, like who are the
yep,
actors that you feel have like elevated a character to like a point that it's now become one of your favorite characters.
yeah.
That's
You know,
always the goal.
and that's a great segue into what I wanted to talk about from my spilled milk today.
Ooh, you got some
We
spilled
got
milk.
I got some spilled milk for us
Ooh.
today. This might get some people hot. Get in the comments. Let us know how you feel about it, because us Potterheads, as people sometimes call themselves. I don't know. I've never liked it, but us Potterheads, we have some stuff to look forward to with the HBO Max show coming out. So
Yeah.
from all I've been reading, it seems like the producers and executive producers really want to make it a more accurate representation of the books. And they've been announcing some of the castings lately, and there's been some news
To
coming out.
preface all of this, also, by the way, Kyle, huge Potterhead, read the books, seen the movies, loves it all. Me, haven't read the books, stopped watching the movies after I think Goblet of Fire when I was a kid. So like not a huge Potterhead. So there's a very like usually Kyle and I are like boom boom boom, like we're just
Yep.
aligned on everything. But this is one of those things where I just honestly don't have a lot of knowledge about
Yeah.
like any of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. But with that being said, the Snape casting was announced, and I
But that
have
I
been
have seen.
seeing it all over the internet, people losing their minds one way or the other. So they casted a black man as Snape, and
Spilt the milk.
people are losing their minds over it. I right off the bat am not one of those people. I could care less because of one factor, and here's my spilled milk and what I think people need to take into account whenever a character gets race swapped or gender swapped. Is that race or gender integral to their character's story? The reality of most white characters is that it isn't, because that was kind of, for lack of a better term, that was kind of the base template in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s when these characters were being created.
Preach.
So when a character of color was created, it normally almost always was created by a person of color so that they could see themselves represented in whatever medium that they were working in.
Well,
So
like what you're saying is like most times, like you know, the race character comes after there's already a white character
there wasn't a
because there
person of
wasn't the
color.
person of color, right? Like so when those characters are created, their race and their struggles are interwoven into that character. Whereas beforehand, people were just making characters and they were just white because they were white. Like the their inner struggle of being a white man wasn't a part of the character. He just was a white man,
Exactly. For
you know?
instance, Snape. Nothing about that person, that character's arc, that character's story, nothing about it is affected by the race of the character. That's all that matters. Like I don't know. Like one of the things I'd seen someone say after I'd given that argument was, well, then let's just cast Tom Holland as Fat Albert, completely missing the point of like I'm going to use that example because, for instance, that character was created because there wasn't any black children's television. There wasn't very many
Right.
or any black children's television programs. So it was created for that specific reason. So recasting a
Yes, it was
character of a different
created
color
with representation in mind.
which
You
is
know?
the case for almost every character. There are exceptions, obviously, but for a vast majority of characters of color, they're characters of color because there wasn't one already there. They were created for that purpose.
Or
So
even like, even if there were like, it's not because there wasn't one already there. Like, we'll take the example of Black Panther, right? In his core of his character, he's an African king who has kept technology from the white Western world because he doesn't trust it. That's like, it's embedded within his character. So he can never be race swapped because, like, it's what makes him the Black Panther.
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
And so when people bring up examples, like, well, that's another example I see often is the Black Panther example. Well, then let's just make Black Panther white. You're missing the point.
right.
You're missing the entirety of the point of it. It's that it doesn't matter for the most part for the white people. For instance, I would argue you shouldn't race swap Bruce Wayne or Oliver Queen because the vast majority of billionaires are white men. So they should probably be white men just because it's also a part of their story. You know what I mean? For them to be privileged white men, that's a part that's integral to their story. So that's an example of a white person that shouldn't be race swapped. But for the most part, it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
Like, and people only started freaking out about it because
beyond just what I've seen, but like, and kind of just like what I know, you know, like that he was like in love with Harry's mom, like like blah blah blah, becomes Harry's mentor, yada yada. Like nothing, like zero of those things get taken away because of a race. Can like a black man not have a crush on Harry's mom? Can a black man not mentor a future Harry? You know, like where there does like
it
his
matters.
race change the story?
If anything, it gives him a little more depth. Like, so I just wanted to cry a little over that spilled milk, just because like it's been frustrating me lately. Just because there's no point in crying over it if it doesn't matter. I totally get it and understand, and will be 100% behind you if it matters. If it doesn't matter, I'll be the first one to call
we
you
just
out.
made a representation video. I think it's the last video we posted,
Mhm.
and we talked about like, man, is right now a bad time to feel represented as your cis white male? Like, yeah, dude, sure. Not every form of media is coming out to just blatantly have you represented, right? Like, sure. Like, we struggling out there as the white man. But like, dudes, it's for a reason. It's because for everything growing up, there wasn't a single game that I played where I couldn't envision myself as the main character.
For the most part, yeah.
Why is that so bad for like the little black kid or the Mexican boy or the girl who, like we were talking about Captain Carter? Why is it so bad for the little girl to think that a woman can be just as strong as Steve Rogers? Why does that hurt you so bad?
And it's hard not to steer these conversations in the direction of misogyny, but it just seems to be the case.
Or like racism, you know, like you don't want to like again, like you said, like, you don't want to just like throw those terms out there and paint people as that. But like when you break it down and you simplify the fraction, right, to its simplest form, just keep simplifying. Why don't you like this? Why don't you want it? Why don't you like seeing it?
Well, especially when you ask them and their response is, let's just make a black character white, or a like, you know, like or a different person, a character of color white.
It's like,
if
okay,
that's your response, then it's a straw man argument. You don't actually care about the character's origins and it being true to the character. You just don't want a person of color on screen. Like, that's the reality of those responses.
Personally not feeling represented.
So
and it's not cool.
if you're gonna get in the comments and say that, you know, what if this person was white, understand that that's what we think about it. It's a straw man argument. It's not a real argument.
Yep. So come with real arguments into our comments, and if you are going to come with those types of arguments, do as well. But just understand that we're probably going to come back at you, telling you that it's okay to be wrong.
Yeah, because it is.
Yeah, it's no crime being wrong, my brethren. It's all right.
Happens to us all the time. I'm sure there's many things in this video.
Yeah, how much we're wrong.
Well, we appreciate you guys stopping by and chatting with us. We really, really hope that you keep the conversation going. We thank you again. We hope you follow at Hosts4Hire podcast on all socials. Try to push us to that 10K. Stay tuned for the next episode. I'm pretty sure Invincible is finishing this week, so we're going to be dropping an Invincible episode later on this week. So stay tuned for that, and see you later.